So the main point of this video was going to be about discussing primarily what's the gear that I actually use, because I do a lot of different reviews on a lot of different products. But as most of you probably know, ideally you want to be able to have a few basic setups that are simple and that work, and you know that they work, and just keep it simple. Like, it's really important to have a primary thing. So there are a lot of guys who might have a gun room or a whole arsenal worth of equipment, but ultimately, if anything were to actually happen, which one are you grabbing? Now, a part of that is because since gun guys like to build and customize different setups, you might end up running into a problem where you have like your DMR, your close quarters but in 300 blackout, your close quarters but in 9mm, your long range but in 6.5 and 308. So you really want to make sure that if something were to actually go down, what are you grabbing? And also be realistic with yourself with what do you think is going to actually happen and which gun would be needed when you grab like that setup. So I want to go through like a few different setups. I have more gear behind the camera that I might end up grabbing, but I'll go through some of like my primary stuff, my main focus equipment, and then if you guys have questions on it, if you want to like go through some more of it in detail, I will go through it. I don't know how this is going to work in regards to YouTube requirements and code of conduct, or whatever they might refer to it as, the community guidelines, but I'm going to go through it regardless. So just for general reference, everything I have here are exact replicas that are in Airsoft to make sure that we're all doing it safely. So let's go through some of the basic stuff first. I think I'll start off with like belts and general accessories before going into the airsoft guns, you know, because we want to make sure we cover the basics first. So for EDC, we'll go through some of the EDC stuff. What are stuff that I actually use? So this is a holster that is from Rigger Arms. Unfortunately, I just heard that they are no longer, as of right now, they might come back in the future, but they are no longer making any production of these, which is really sad. This is a Glock 19 holster, and it uses a, I actually have these clips switched out from guys from V Development Group. I actually did a video on one of their belts also, which I don't have nearby, but it's actually also one of the belts I use. But these are just metal clips. I do also enjoy the G-code clips because the G-code clips are able to protrude out a little bit more, and when it does that and it's protruding out, it pushes the butt of the gun more into your stomach. So for concealed carry, this is pretty good. I never really think that appendix is the most comfortable thing, but based on the way I carry and why I carry, it usually ultimately is the main reason that I carry in that format. So having a flashlight protruding at the bottom is not always going to be the most comfortable. I don't know if anyone really has a perfect system in regards to how to make it very comfortable, but it's what's necessary for my situation. So that's usually what I'm going to carry. If you notice, I'm trying to see if the camera can pick it up. In the back, there's a piece of Velcro that's sticking over there. And what that piece of Velcro does is a lot of people use like the Dr. Scholl's shoe inserts, and you put a piece of Velcro on that, and on this you stick it, and then the bottom of the insole will wrap a little bit around. So when it's sticking into your body, it's a little bit more comfortable because it's kind of like a gel that keeps everything in place and makes the flashlight and other parts of the gun not really protrude into your body so harshly. So that's kind of like a mini upgrade. It does matter on the way that you're setting up because you are adding bulk. So it's going to be a question about if that makes sense. Now, also during the summer, people might not want a full setup like this just because it might get very hot very quickly. So that insole is kind of like a like not rubbery, but it's like a gel almost. So that actually also makes it pretty nice. Again, it's still not perfect. It's gonna be hot, but it's still pretty good for what that is. So that's one option, and the biggest difference between this one and the other one that I'm going to show you is going to be that this is first of all like fixed as one piece. Some people prefer to have the elastic similar to this one that has the elastic. But the other thing is going to be that this does have a flashlight and the next one does not have a flashlight. I would always prefer to carry with a flashlight if possible. In fact, what I'm going to start running to test it out is going to be the Glock 48 because it's slimmer and because there are like smaller lights now that are available. I might want to try that to be able to get a more comfortable setup while not losing the ability to carry a flashlight, because there are plenty of times where I'd rather carry this without a flashlight just because it's more comfortable and I don't want to stress about the fact that it's like digging into my body. So I might go with something like this. This is the Tier 1 concealed holster. They do have newer versions of this, I believe, that are kind of even more concealable, but it has a wing similar to this one. It does have a wing as well. It has the firearm plus the magazine. I'm actually curious, I don't know if people in chat would do this, but I'm curious to hear people's input, is that some people I've seen, or some configurations that are available, are that the magazine, usually the way I train, the way I carry, is that the magazine will be orientated where the bullets are going to be facing the center of your body. So when you draw the gun, point the gun, and when you pull out the magazine, it should be able to seat perfectly. Some people orient it the other way, and it's not a problem if you're actually able to be consistent with the draw motion that you're using. So if you, for some reason, grab it this way and insert it into the gun or something, and it works, then it works. But I'd be curious to see. I'm going to look at the chat. But I think that most people are going to orient. They're going to point in the right direction, which would be facing the center line of your body. The same thing if you're going to be left-handed, it's going to face the other direction, just because for most people, I would imagine that is the most comfortable. So I'm not sure which direction most people do. I would assume most people do it in that configuration. But yeah, that's going to be something else. What I've noticed also for myself is that this elastic that they have in the middle of the holster, although it might work well and it's like pretty much okay, I wonder if it makes that big of a difference with concealment. Like it doesn't actually conform to your body and give you that much of a benefit when it stretches, at least not from what I've tried. So this one being one solid piece and this one being elastic, I don't know if anyone has a different experience with that in regards to it being a little bit more comfortable, but that's kind of what I would end up using. Again, these are both perfectly suitable holsters. Realistically, this is what's currently available right now. I'm still up to try other holsters, so if you guys have recommendations, like a holster I should try out, I'll try it out. I'm curious to see. So that's going to be for like EDC carry options. The belts I use are going to be very dependent on how long I'm going to be wearing it for. So if I'm going to be in an environment where I need to carry it for a very long time, the other question is going to be if I'm standing or if I have the ability to sit. So if it's going to be like in synagogue, for example, I'd probably be standing a lot more than if I'd be going to a party or something along those lines. So that's going to determine also how I carry and which belt I use. So the three belts that I have in front of me here, this one is one I've been using for a very long time. The only downside to this belt is that it's Velcro, which is not really a bad thing, but it makes it awkward to adjust in public if you want to loosen or tighten it a little bit. So this is from Blue Alpha Gear. It's one of their like very low profile EDC belts, very rigid, works really nicely. It loops around this buckle, just like that. And I'll try to see again if the camera can see that. But the benefits of a thin looped buckle like that, the reason why it's very valuable is because if you're carrying an appendix and it goes with both clips on both sides, that works really well. Versus even the one I'm wearing right now, the belt I'm wearing right now is from Core Essentials, so it has a much larger buckle. So the belt itself is amazing, and the fact that they have like a quick adjust system is also amazing. But the buckle being so large, it's complicated to be able to have the clips on both sides. And even if you do get the clips to be on both sides, the actual buckle protrudes a little bit more. So some people end up putting the buckle off to the side, which again, depending on the environment, that could be very easily noticed as that's not normal, especially if it's going to be an upscale, dressy environment where you can have a tucked in white shirt and things like that. That's more easily identifiable as being an issue. So that just might be something to consider. So Blue Force gear works really well. Yeah, you probably wouldn't wear this in a dressy environment either. I'm still interested in hearing for other belt options, because I'd like to be able to have a belt that's rigid but has the main thing, ideally not Velcro, and also that the buckle in front is not going to be so large where it would impede the way the clips attach to the belt, because that's usually the problem I've ended up seeing. So that's one option. The other option is going to be from Vetter. So the downside to this option is that it's non-adjustable. What that means is that it does have an adjustable initial Velcro. So it works exactly the same way as the Blue Force gear, but once you figure out the position you like it, the loop wraps back around onto the inside, the interior of what will be touching your body. So you pretty much choose what works for you and then it's set. Again, there's pros and cons to that. Some people like that, but there's this clip attachment right over here that it loops through, and then friction holds it in place, and I think it works actually very nicely. Again, the biggest downside being that it's non-adjustable at all. I'm reading the chats for you guys. Okay, so someone asked about belly bands. Okay, for me personally, I haven't had an issue with the Core Essential leather belts before. I've had mine for a few years. It's very possible. Obviously, everything is able to wear and tear, so it might be dependent on the clips you're using or the amount of strain you're putting on the belt. It makes sense. It's not impossible for leather belts not to wear. So far for myself, I haven't had that issue. But again, I'm not playing that off as not possible. Just from my experience, belly bands I use, but they're very, very specific on which type and very specific on which environment and attire you're wearing, because that's something that could very quickly protrude and be very noticeable. So I'm actually going to grab that. I actually have that right behind the camera, so I'll grab that in a second to show you guys. I'll finish off with this. If I don't come back to that, remind me in the chat, and I'm going to make sure to go back to that. But yes, there are definitely times and places where I would use a belly band, especially if it's going to be something that I need a very heavy loadout for, and I want to be able to make sure to use it in the environment properly. What do you think about the tactical belts with Velcro inside? I'm assuming that would be something like this, unless you're talking about on the inside of the waistline, meaning the belt goes through the inside of the waistband. But this is an example of a belt that has Velcro on the inside. So this is again from Vetter. So again, I like this belt and it works well, but if you have a meal or if you do anything differently, then your body's naturally going to expand and contract differently. So it's going to either get very tight or very uncomfortable. So for regular day use, I think this is fine. I don't think this is a problem. But it comes with the downside of it not really being adjustable. So that's going to be that. So what I'll do is actually, let me grab the belly band that you guys just mentioned, and I'll take a look at that. So I'll show you that kind of loadout. I have it right behind the camera. Okay, I'm back. Okay, so over here, we have this bag. I made a dedicated video on this being a active shooter response bag. So I still think that's a really awesome option because it kind of gives you the bare minimum of everything in one place, including basic levels of medical, but it's meant not as like, there's some guys who have full kits. If you're able to rock a full kit and have it in your car and have it properly secured, because you don't want someone to steal that, that's like not okay. So that's gonna be something to be aware of, but this is kind of like a very mainstream thing that I think the majority of people could get away with. Even if it's something in your house you could just grab and go, I think it works. So this is still kind of like a proof of concept because I'm not currently like in any specific radio communications team where the radio would be necessary, but it's cool, it's good to be able to have it. So this specific belly band is called the Unity Tactical Clutch. I think it's a very, very, very nice setup. Also, I looked at this years ago, and in the past, I think they were selling for roughly $150 or something. And although I love the concept, I was not really down to pay that. I think later they collaborated with Vertex, and Vertex and them were able to collaborate in a way where they dropped the price. So I think this goes for around, I think it's around $70. It might be less, but I think it's around that price. So what it is it is a belly band. So I'll stand up to see if I'm able to actually get it in frame. Adjust this so you can hear me. So the front, you're able to have, you pretty much customize it. So right over here, there's pistol magazine pouches. Over here, there's an AR-15 magazine. There's a radio in the back. The 6 o'clock position, so directly what would be on my back, I leave empty because I don't really want to land on that and it's not really comfortable. And then over here, you're gonna see that this is from, this is from Soul Rescue. It's a individual like mini trauma kit. And then on the side of that, here's where it gets really important. A lot of the belly bands that are available on the market are going to have a Velcro option to secure your gun, and I'm super not okay with that. This is an option where you could put a Kydex holster on the inside and the Velcro's in place. So at the minimum, you actually have a holster that's able to secure the firearm properly. Otherwise, again, it freaks me out when people have like the Velcro loops or the clip-ons, and they really freak me out. And then in the front, I have a tourniquet. So this setup might look very large, but especially where I'm living now, in the winter, if you're wearing a sweater, I did a video on this, you can check it out, the Unity Tactical Clutch. I did a video on this and I showed that under a sweater, you could have like a full loadout ready to go. And it's completely concealable under a sweater. If you're wearing a jacket in the winter, if you're wearing a jacket in a house of worship, but you just get it adjusted in a way where it's set for this kind of system, then it works well. It does work well. So for any high priority times where I feel like I might need more, or just to have this, again, in that tiny bag and have that full setup, I think it works great. So I think that's a really cool option. So I'm not against belly bands, just my primary goal, regardless of whichever belly band you use, is please make sure you get a holster that would be attached to it that would be able to secure the gun properly. That's really, really the end goal. You don't want to be the guy that ends up having a negligent discharge based on just a bad holster setup. I'm being asked what movement I'm being associated with, so I'm not really familiar with either of these, honestly. Sorry. Okay, so let's continue. So that's the belly band option. Those are going to be my two everyday carry kind of setups. Now, let's go for more of like a duty belt slash tactical belt setup. The one that I'm currently running, which I've really been enjoying, is this one. And oh my God, it's heavy. This belt is from Core Essentials. So Core Essentials recently came out with a battle belt setup. So I know for some reason Core Essentials has some products that have bad reputations, and again, I'm not really sure why. Again, to each their own. For me personally, I haven't had negative experiences. It doesn't mean that other people haven't had, but for me, I've been pretty good with them. But what this battle belt is, I did make a video on this also. I put one magazine just for reference. Those are the pistol mag pouches. Those are from Wilder Tactico, and the all the pouches on this are actually from Wilder Tactical. The belt itself, the battle belt itself, is of course Essentials, and you can see hanging out over here, this is their inner belt. So it goes through the regular belt loops, and then this attaches to it. So far, this has been one of the nicer ones I've used, battle belt wise, mainly because since they have their attachment setups over here, where you can hear the clicking, right? So when it goes on your pants, oftentimes for the other belts I've used, I kept having to like retighten the buckle, because every time it loosens up and you lose control of the structure of the belt line. So having something that clicks into place, it's clicked and it's stuck. Like that's where it is. So for me, it's actually worked really nicely. And then I have my fire on the right side, 3 pistol pouches, 1 rifle pouch. I have a dump pouch. I'm watching the muzzle over there. I have a dump pouch and I have a medical pouch on the back. This is just kind of for immediate stuff. It does also have a tourniquet holder on the bottom over there, but I prefer to have the tourniquet right over here, just for being able to have quicker access to it, as well as also I have a tourniquet on the main medical like trauma pouch I'd have at the range. Obviously have one on you, that's very important, but that's kind of what worked out for me. Just get a concealed carry hose. Yeah, so Hoodlum's gun bench. What's up, bro? First of all, he's saying that looks like a lot of extra stuff to be able to have on you. It is true. The thing is that I'm sure most people would agree that if you're able to carry a lot of stuff on you and it's comfortable, or just you're able to do it, then why not? So the primary time I'm going to be wearing something like that is going to be like during certain services of the year in the house of worship. So being able to have all that extra stuff, I think, is awesome. Will I ever need to deploy it? I really hope not. But I'd like to be able to have as many options on me as possible. If I'm going to be in a house of worship, I'm not going to have a rifle magazine. That's not necessary for me. I'm generally going to have the pistol setup. But then I would also have extra medical equipment and other equipment that will be able to be associated to either reach out to law enforcement or whatever. I'm sure we're all very familiar today that we don't rely on law enforcement. We are just going to do our part to bridge the gap from when the situation begins until they arrive, but we don't rely on them. I'm sure we're all, unfortunately, at that point. Someone asked, what type of group? Okay, I get you. I am Chabad Lubavitch. Yes, and then better to have it and not need it. And that's kind of like the mantra that I think most people will stick with. I'd rather have all that extra equipment on me and never need to use it. So that's going to be for my belt setup. Going past that, this is my super realistic airsoft gun. Very, very nice. I had a custom made airsoft gun. I really wanted to make sure that I could train with it and utilize it the same way I would my real gun, but without obviously ever presenting that in a live format. So what we have over here is a Glock 19. Now, this is my Glock 19 Gen 3. When I was originally living in California, these are the only ones that are legally obtainable in the state of California, because when you go from Gen 3 to Gen 4, they get significantly more deadly. I'm not sure if you're aware, because 4 is a bigger number than 3, so it changes the internal ballistics of the round, thus causing it to be a much more lethal bullet. So just be aware of that. If you're going to get a gun and you're able to get it in a state that's legal, try to go with the bigger number, because that really makes a difference, especially in the state of California, with the lethality of the one that you choose. So definitely make sure that that's how it goes, right? Really, really make sure. So the way I have it set up is I'm going to be actually making a video that should be coming out next week on the reason why I no longer stipple my guns. The very, very short version of that is I now prefer Talon grips or some other stick-on grips. I know, again, a lot of people might have had different experiences with Talon grips. For me, they've been very positive. The best part is that after it wears out, I peel it off, put on a new one for $25, as opposed to the roughly $300 I spent initially for stippling. For only, just like anything else, it's going to wear out. It's going to wear out. So the question is, once it wears out, are you able to burn into the same plastic again? And how many times could you do that to keep the stipple going? And then your gun's going to be melted through. Or have a sticker that you can put on. It lasts in my experience, for the amount of times I run a gun this specific platform, it's lasts around the same time, maybe a little bit less than the actual stippling did. The difference is that this is not permanent. I'm able to replace it for $25, and I think it's well worth the money for what it is. This is not the original Glock slide. I do have the original Glock slide that I had to cut for an RMR. I ended up getting this slide separately. I believe it was from Zafiri Precision. And then I have the Holliston 509. I'm going to be doing an update video on the specific optic at some point. I really think it's cool. And then I have the Ameriglow blacked out sights, because since primarily my main focus is going to be on the red dot, I didn't want any colors that would pop if I'm trying to get my main focus on the red dot. Okay, someone just asked a question about which position I would recommend carrying in a Kapata. I'll speak about that in 1 second. That's a great question. So in the front, I have the Streamlight TLR1HL. This is the 800 lumen version. They do already have come out with the 1000 lumen version. The question I have for myself is if I'm going to stick with this setup and continue running it, or would I upgrade to the 1000 lumen option that is now available, or would I potentially switch to something like the Surefire Ultra, which is now coming out for the, I believe it's also 1000 lumens, but it also has a very high candela. That might be a great option as well. So far, I don't know the measurement differences, but I believe I tried the Mod Light pistol mounted light, and I did have some issues with it. It was also very big. It was much larger. I believe it was definitely larger than this one. So I'd rather have it as lower as a profile. That's another great question. I'm going to get to the first one first, which was which position do I carry? So a part of the reason why I carry appendix is because a kapata, for those who are in the chat and might not be aware, is religiously we wear a garment called a kapata. It's pretty much a long coat. So what that is a coat that goes all the way down almost to your knees. Some people might go further, and there's only a buckle attachment, a clip attachment or button in the center. So not center, it's a little bit off to the side. So what I've done with my kapata, which I made a video on this as well, is I replaced my buttons with snaps. So it still looks like buttons, but I'm able to just pop it off. On top of the kapata, there's something called a gartel, which is pretty much like a rope that goes around your body. It's also part of like religious, as a religious garment. So the downside to that setup is that if I open up my jacket, to go all the way to, let's say, the 3 o'clock position means I'm trying to break through a lot of different materials, including my shirt and the jacket and the gartel and my tzitzis and all this other stuff. So I'd rather be able to open up the jacket and have it right in front of me to be able to present. The other thing there that you might have noticed is there's something called fringes, or tzitzit is something that Jews wear, and that's this stuff, this stringy stuff right over here. And the risky part of that as well is that if you're carrying in the 3 o'clock position, I'm always scared of it accidentally reholstering and having the strings go into the trigger guard and discharging the firearm. So again, having it in front for me works best, and I felt most comfortable doing that way. So that's a part of the reason why I do carry appendix. The other question is brighter always better? So this is going to be a debate topic. I don't believe that brighter is always better. The time I noticed this is going to be when I did the low light building clearing course with Tactical Response in Tennessee. Really awesome course. I really enjoyed that course. But the main thing about that, so the main thing I really got out of that is that if you have a 1000, I had a 1200 lumen light during that course, it lights up the room beautifully. But if you're constantly having your eyes adjust to really dark, really bright, really dark, really bright, it becomes very complicated. You could do what's called umbrella lighting, which means instead of having the light being pointed in one direction, if I just point it up, it already kind of lights up the room very differently than if you point it in one direction. So it helps with your eyes being adjusted to that a little bit more. But yeah, the thing though in the tactical world that we're generally careful about is it's no longer really about lumens, because you could have a very high lumen but a very low candela. So candela is the hot spot of the light. The lumens is like kind of like the general brightness of the light. So having the general brightness being bright is great, but you really want to focus more also on the candela, which is the center hotspot. So that's more, again, you can see where the light technology has evolved to the point that that's a lot about what really professional companies are dealing with is going to be candela. What we suggest if a person physically so if it doesn't work for you, so let's say you're a very large guy, then I would try carrying, let's say, the 1 o'clock position. If you really can't carry a belly band option under a kapata, that's an option that could work. You just need to set your kapata to fit with that sizing. If that's not an option, Outside the waistband is also an option under a kapata because it's still concealed. It's still really something you have to be careful with. But I'd recommend at that point is if you're going to do 3 o'clock position, whether inside or outside the waistband in a kapata, I would say that you definitely should upgrade your snaps so that they're able to be snapped open. And I would have my gartel on the inside of my jacket below my belt line. So that way when I'm opening it, I'm worrying less about that and I still would be able to have access to my gun. I hope that makes sense. And I hope I answered that question. Okay, so Hoodlum's Gun Bench writes, work on ATMs all day long in the heat, carry appendix, and I'm chubby. If you're going to get a light, definitely look into more candela. So that's true, especially during the day. Definitely during the day, that's going to be a variable that people don't take into account. Where having a high lumen again is great, but you also need to make sure that that light will punch through. So it's not going to be only during the night because even though 1,000 lumen light is able to go really far, but during bright daylight it probably won't. So having a good light that has a good hotspot is very important. So that's an example of the difference between this light, so the Streamlight TL1 HL, and my current everyday carry light, which is this Malkoff, is the E2XTL, I believe. Yes, the E2XTL. This everyday carry light has a much better hotspot than this pistol light, and it should be really the opposite way around, because for everyday carry you might not need that punch as much, but this is a great setup. I'd also wish at some point, well, these lights are pretty big, but to be able to switch them out, that'd be really cool, but I know that'd be really large. But again, there are plenty of new lights out there that work really great. What about ankle holsters? I agree, ankle holsters will get you killed, but there are places for them. The reason why I say, the reason why I'm never immediately going to knock down an option is because there are certain scenarios where it might work. So if it's going to be, let's say, a backup gun, for example, that might be fine as long as you have a primary gun that you'd be able to have as your primary gun. So the reason why I have kind of like a hilarious situation with ankle holsters is I was at a synagogue where a guy was carrying with an ankle holster, and he sat down and his pants were larger because he was able to cover up the gun, but he didn't take into account that if your pants fit perfectly, it's going to go just to the bottom of your ankle, so it looks professional. But then when you sit down, your pants move up. So he was sitting down at a table that was full exposed on the bottom, so everyone on the opposite side of the table was able to just see the protruding gun on his ankle. So if you're going to do it, just make sure you do it safely. I hope that would be a backup gun. I also hope, because I haven't seen it myself, I also didn't do enough research to have seen it myself. I haven't seen a lot of great options in regards to making sure that it's secure and the trigger guard is properly covered. I'm not saying there isn't. I just didn't do enough research to know that. So even if you do that, just make sure at the minimum it's your secondary. I really wouldn't recommend that as your primary location to be able to get it done. Cool. We're good. Answering questions. Any other questions so far? We're good. Cool. So that's in regards to the pistol setup. I was on third. So I have the Holliston 508T, which I think is great. I put this flashlight on it. I have the Talon grips. Another thing that really worked for me well, which I really love, is this is the Agency Arms Magwell. It's really nice. It's a concealed carry Magwell. It doesn't protrude much, but it really helps with being able to reload well. I also have the Apex trigger. I am looking for a different trigger than the Apex trigger, because for me, if I demo it really quickly, I'll try to see if I can show you. Let's see that maybe that works. But when I bring it out, there's a lot more smushiness than what I like for a trigger. Even though I know it's empty, I'm going to do that again because it worries me. But you bring it back, and then there's a little bit of smushiness. So oftentimes when I'm bringing new shooters to a course, I'll give them a very stock Glock and have them shoot it, and the wall is very defined. And on this one, the wall isn't really well defined. It's kind of smushy when it gets to that point. So I'll try that again to see if you can see it. But there's kind of like a smush right over there. I don't know if you can see that. That's right there. There's a smushiness. And it makes me a little bit not comfortable with it. So I would like to be able to see if there's another option out there that's reliable. I know it's a known brand. It has a background for how it works, but also has a better wall for shooting. The barrel on this is the original Glock barrel I had. The only thing I've had to replace on this gun so far for the thousands of rounds that I've shot is the spring, because it wore out to the point that I started getting malfunctions. Other than that, the extractor so far has been going well. The barrel has been well. It's been accurate so far. And yeah, that's kind of like the basic setup that I have over there. I got more questions coming in. Yes, you could stipple guns yourself. I'd recommend against it just because here's what you could do. You could get a polymer 80, not to finish it, but you could get a polymer 80 to practice on it, because I think it would be better to save the risk of losing money there if you mess up. It takes practice, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can even practice by just getting regular sheets of Kydex and you could measure it out to the same thickness as a Glock in practice, because I think you need to practice a lot before being comfortable enough in knowing how that works. I know a lot of guys who do it. I have nothing against it. It scares me. I would rather leave it to the professionals or go with Talon grips because they are replaceable and I worry less about them. Glocks are known to have a squishy trigger. I'm getting my first gun tomorrow, and it's a Smith & Wesson Shield Plus. Great gun, great option. Glocks so far for me have not been bad. The main reason, by the way, I switched out from my Glock Trigger to this one was not because of the trigger, because I thought the Glock Trigger was fine. It's a consistent, like 5.5 pound trigger pull. It works consistently every single time. Nothing wrong with it. The thing I've had is that when I went to classes, the shoe, the inner shoe, the safety or whatever it is of the trigger was when you're shooting a lot of bullets, that really like cut into my finger and hurt. So I wanted something that was a little bit softer. So the Apex Trigger's inner shoe safety or whatever is much softer to be able to press. So for a lot of rounds that worked well for me. Hoodlum's Gun Bench loves his Apex Trigger over his trigger from Glock. Again, they work. I have nothing against them. I'm just curious to see, like, I know Agency Arms did make one. I don't know how popular they are or how good they are. I believe CMC made one as well. Also, again, I'm not sure how familiar, like how good they are. Let's see. There's Shadow Systems, maybe. I know there's multiple people who've manufactured them. I'm just curious to see what other options there. Yeah, trigger safety. It's not actually trigger safety. I know. Thank you. Okay, so that's going to be kind of on the pistol side of stuff, of like the general stuff that I have. We're going to go to the rifle aspect. So I'm going to move this stuff over here. So I'm going to go through. Okay, so I have multiple different setups. I'm just giving you the one that, if right now I had to grab one and use it, which one would it be? So, like, again, I have multiple. There's a lot of really awesome setups that I have. I have another build coming up that is going to end up being my primary, but as of right now, this is what I'm running. My main focus is going to be within 200 yards because the area that I live is quite large. There's a lot of room for things to be able to happen. So it might be a little bit larger of an area as opposed to in a city. So my perspective was 200 yards and in, roughly. I'm able to shoot that without a magnified optic because, again, also I'm not someone dealing with a hostage situation. I'm not dealing with someone that might have a lot of potential for a civilian casualty because I'm in a somewhat rural location. So I didn't need a magnifier, although I could add a magnifier. It's not that big of a deal. So the current setup that I have right now is this one. So the lower is a Colt lower receiver, and it works really nicely. I really like this lower receiver. I have the Geisley SSP, which is the single stage precision trigger, which is currently my favorite trigger. On precision guns, I like 2-stage triggers. On like beauty kind of setups, I like single stage triggers. Something that has become hated for some reason, which I don't understand why. I understand why, but it's going to be based on how you use it, is the bad lever. So the primary reason why I like this bad lever is because when I'm racking the gun to be able to keep it locked during a malfunction or something, I'm able to have it locked, and then I push it forward. I don't always use it for being able to reload. I'm generally going to smack the side of it because it does have a larger side that you're able to whack now. So I don't know if that's going to be able to be picked up over there, but it does have a larger piece that you're able to use to whack it. So that works fine for me. But the primary reason why I have it is for malfunction clearing or wanting to be able to lock back the gun. I like the option of not needing to take my primary shooting hand off fire control. I really never want this hand to be let go because it's your primary shooting hand and it shouldn't be let go. So being able to do that, I think is really good. Bad lever equals negative discharge if you're using it to reload and then you're putting it through. I can see why that's a problem. But again, I'm not generally using it for that reason. Although, is it a training thing? I don't know. That's going to be something that'll be heavily debated for the rest of the time. How do you factor Shabbos into training courses? Because a lot of courses I've seen run mostly on Shabbos. Also, where do you deal with kosher food? That's a very good question. All the courses I took obviously were not on Shabbos. It took me over a few years to go through all the courses I wanted to take. I'm still taking obviously courses. You never stop taking courses. But it was very difficult for me. For example, a course I really want to take that I still have not been able to take, which is very sad, is a course from Aaron Cowan of Stage Dynamics. Really like the guy, but to my understanding, he only ever offers civilian courses on Saturdays or Shabbos, which is again disappointing for me because I love to train there. Other than that, it was a very difficult time. What I did with food is I usually brought instead of cans of tuna, you could get bags of tuna. and that's that's what I did. If not that, I was doing peanut butter sandwiches. I got away once with being able to get like schnitzel or something like that to be able to travel. Food was never great, but I was doing it because I really, really wanted to train hard. And like there was some of these rural locations don't have any options. The other thing you could say is you could always come to courses that we offer. Obviously, none of my classes are on Shabbos, but it also depends obviously on where you're located. If you're not located nearby, I am starting to travel around the U.S. now, and I'm trying to see where I'm able to go to help people out. So we could always deal with that. Hoodlum's Gun Branch. I'll argue. I've watched two guys negligent. Oh my God, do I mumble? I talk too fast. You saw two guys negligent discharge, and both know how to run guns. Again, I'm not saying that's true. I just like the option to be able to have a lock back. I know modern low receivers might come with an option of ambidextrous controls where I can lock the gun back without needing to add accessories. I'm not planning on buying any more of these if that clears anything up, but I would like to be able to get an ambidextrous option if possible. So the weight setup is that this is a Colt low receiver. This is a pretty basic, it is from Magwell, I believe. It's not BCM. Magwell buttstock. The BCM angled grip is my favorite grip so far. It's from the Gunfighter, like organized stuff. The bolt carrier group is from Colt as well. The riser is from Scalarworks or Scalarworks, I heard people pronounce it. I think it's Scalarworks. That's going to be the GIF versus GIF debate in the gun world, actually. And then I have on top of that the Holosun HS515 CM. I do believe that I recommend the GM now, just because I don't think the extra price for a solar panel is necessary. But they both run excellent. I'm not replacing it. It's great. That works. The upper receiver is an Aero Precision M4E1. It is currently my softest shooting gun without the need of an aggressive muzzle brake, because what this is a 14.5-inch pin and welded barrel, so it does come to the legal classification of 16 inches, and it has a mid-length gas system. It has the Vg6 Epsilon muzzle brake, and for some reason, this is just the smoothest and softest shooting gun I currently run. It's really great. I have the BCM hand stop, and I really like that as well. The flashlight on this is going to be the Streamlight ProTac HLX, and I used a Airsoft mount to mount it to the rail. And it does have the pressure pad. This is the pressure pad from Streamlight. I don't like it. It's not the best, but it works fine for what I need it to. So that's going to be the setup that has. And the hand stop I really prefer, besides for legalities. I don't need that extra space. I'm usually doing that because it also angles my hand in a way where I could press the button to be able to press it nicely. I have considered parting with Hoodlum and possibly offering training in Texas. I am currently in communication with him and my dude Hoodlum's Gun Bench, who's in the chat as well, and we are probably going to go to Texas next. The question is going to be where in Texas. As of right now, it seems like it's going to be that I'll be in Houston. If the range is in Houston, I don't know. Hoodlum would be able to publicly post that if that's going to be where it is. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to try to make it happen. And then in regards to GBRS and Mike Glover, I really like those people. I haven't checked out their courses, honestly. I would like to train with them, like those guys. Are they the same? By the way, is GBRS the group that has that new riser that's like higher than 2.26, and then you can mount like a PEC 15 like right in front of that? Please tell me someone else that in the chat saw that. I think it was from GBRS. Is it from GBRS? I'm checking it up. GBRS mount. Is it? I'm pulling it up. It is. You guys have to see what that looks like. Yeah, it's $750. Oh, it's amazing. It looks cool. If they offered it in a 193 option, maybe a 2.26, then maybe, but it's $750. I mean, first of all, I think I'm very pro the idea that anyone should be able to offer and charge whatever they want for any of their stuff. It's their product. I'm just saying, like, I'm very curious to know about the sales, because it is, first of all, a very niche item, which is fine. And the second thing is, I'm curious to know how many are they selling? Like, what does it cost? I work with machining companies. Like, I'm actively currently today working with machining companies, and I know generally what things would cost. So the only reason why it might cost that amount of money is because they have to do it in such low quantities, and they need the machining to be very precise. So for that reason, the price just goes up because the quantity amount to the amount that they're selling is not that good. So they might be putting in investment to get a larger amount of people involved to then later be able to charge less because of bulk orders. But again, I don't know if that's going to change just because it's a very niche item. How many people are buying it? I don't know. Yeah, it feels like it's just for law enforcement and military. I don't have budgets for that kind of thing to spend. First of all, as Americans and as civilians, we could spend much more than what the government can, just because we could spend on quality items whatever we want. Also, if it would work really well, which I don't have enough experience with it to know, but if it works really well for night vision use and for gas mask use, then that's awesome. Again, I haven't trained enough with either of those to know how much of a difference that makes. But I know that I'm of the opinion that it looks really cool. I think it looks really cool, but it's really tall for my neck, and it's very expensive for me to want to try it out just for fun. So that's kind of where that's holding. I also like the M-Lock system. The only thing I'll change, by the way, on this setup is I think I would end up going with the option to have some rail mount or something else on top, just because it got a little bit confusing in regards to wire organization and things like that. So for me, this is kind of what works like really well for my personal setup. I enjoy it. So that's going to be of this. So now here's the thing about AR-15s. I love the fact that you can now just switch out an upper and be able to have a completely different type of platform. Side note, by the way, this is the Blue Force Gear Vicker Sling. Is it Blue Force Gear? Yeah, Blue Force, right? I'm just going to confirm. Yeah, Blue Force Gear Vicker Sling. It's pretty much my favorite sling. I really enjoy them. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, not crazy expensive. They are on the, at least what would be considered the mid-tier in regards to cost. But I think they're really well worth it, and I enjoy them. So that's going to be for that. I want to show you guys another upper, though. So here's another upper that I'm using. So the primary reason why I want to show off this upper is that I like the fact that this is a company that I know has this entire thing fully made in America. Not just the entire thing fully made in America, but they make everything in-house in America. So it's like a fully American-made upper receiver, which I really like, and runs nicely. I believe this is the system. This is from Axis Manufacturing, which for those who we were just discussing, since I'm now traveling around the US, this month I'm actually traveling to Kansas, but that's going to be a privatized course in this Sunday. And then I'm going to be in Spokane, which I was told is pronounced, Washington, to do a course with Axis Manufacturing. This entire thing, including the gas block, is made by Axis Manufacturing. I think the only thing not is the barrel, which is from Ballistic Advantage, which I think is a great barrel as well. So those are really cool. It has a standard charging handle, but I'm going to switch it out at some point to an ambidextrous charging handle. I also wrapped that tip with goon tape because it actually works nicely in the winter. If you're using a charging handle like this, it'll get sharp. So having something softer there is nice for being able to not get cut. It has M-Lock, and they actually just upgraded their whole system to newer rails, which I think are going to be much nicer. So I'm excited to check that out. And if you haven't noticed already, look how cool that muzzle brake is. It works so well, but also it is abnormally obnoxious to the people next to you. But if you want to have a good time, this is a very cool muzzle brake. I have an urge to put this on a 10.5 and just run it. I just want to see what that's able to do, just because that would be so hilarious, and I'd probably burn my hair off. And I say that because that's actually happened to me before. I put a Surefire Pro Comp on a 11.5-inch upper, and I went to the range, and when I fired it, the fireball kind of went directly off to the sides and then wrapped because it hits the wall and just kind of went back, and it literally, without exaggeration, burnt hair on my arm. So that was a very fun experience, and that was really cool, and everyone looks like, whoa, and then you're that guy at the range just once because it's very cool. Try to keep it outdoors, and it was it was a lot of fun though. Okay, so that was kind of like the basic overview. If you guys have questions, feel free to leave questions. I'm going to check the chat to see what other questions are coming in. So again, at the end of this month, Spokane, Washington, to be able to do 2 active shooter courses. They're going to be back to back. One is going to be at a 10 a.m. slot. The other one is going to be at a 3 p.m. slot, roughly 4 hours each course, and it's going to be dealing with barricades, dealing with blood trinkets, all that kind of good stuff, and it's a lot of fun. I have one gun with a muzzle brake, and I don't like them. Pros and cons. First of all, by the way, remember that in the state that I'm in, I legally am required to have one. So it's not always going to be an option in regards to if I want to go to an indoor range and shoot it, I'd rather not go there to have questions. Go get an upper built by Trajectory Arms. I'll look into that. I'm cool. I'm down to check that out. By the way, as a side note, for those who are still watching, first of all, appreciate you guys watching. It's always weird to me that you guys would actually care. Like, who am I to give you information? I might not allowed to say that as an influencer. Like, oh, I said influencer. I'm saying. The question I have is trajectory arms. I'll check them out. I'm curious to check them out. So again, in my state, it's legally required for you to have a muzzle brake. And if I want to go to indoor range to sight in my gun or something, I'd rather not have questions asked from me. The tactical. How do you even highlight words? How do you highlight words? Oh, is that a tag? And then am I new to? Oh my god, I feel like I'm old. I'm not in tune with the generation. I'm not that old. So yeah, if it's required, then having a good muzzle brake is good. That's why the one from Aero Precision is pretty minimalistic in regards to aggressive use. So the Vg6 Epsilon is a really nice muzzle brake. I like it again because it's not specifically crazy. Although, oh, by the way, a company I want to give credit to, which I think in the past was more, man, it's true. I think in the past they were more gimmicky. Now I think they're making really awesome stuff. Is Strike Industries. They're making muzzle brakes now. They could also attach forward mitigating devices, so it works really well. I think they've really started making really nice things. So I'm still running some of their stuff. For example, I'm running their base plate for their Glock magazines, and I think they work really nicely. So credit to them, because if you are able to get a muzzle brake, but then you could also put that for indoor range, I think those work well. Have you heard of Agilite, or is it Agilite? I think it's Agilite. Yes, I've heard of them. I believe they're an Israeli company. They do make a lot of really great stuff. Preference based on which things you want from them. I think they make really nice plate carriers, I believe. But yeah, they do make very nice things. Let's see here, other questions. How do you feel about synagogues paying for security? I've heard of a bring in which the Rebbe said we must be responsible for our own security protection. I absolutely believe that security should be at every house of worship, regardless of whether it's the shul, church, or mosque. However, I understand that for a lot of places it could be a financial issue or financial restraint. So the first thing would be about applying for grants. Grants are very readily available. I deal with them all the time for security assessments, that the government will be able to help compensate for the cost of security guards. If not that, at minimum, get a security assessment. That's something else that I provide. But at the minimum, if you don't have a budget in mind, there's other things you're able to do to structurally secure a facility without needing to spend millions of dollars. On top of that, regardless of the state, there should be some available option in regards to having someone armed on the inside of the facility. And even if it's not legal, I don't care. I'm sorry. Because if we're dealing with a place where hundreds of people are able to get killed and the response time for police will even be 2 minutes, 2 minutes is a lot of time, and we need to be able to do something about it, and I don't care. We need to be able to have options to be able to protect ourselves and not rely on other people. So I think that's something to be responsible for. We not just by the forbearance by the Rebbe, but also in general, halakhically, we have a obligation to be able to protect ourselves and those of us around us. So I think it's really important. So when are you getting a 10.5 Daniel Defense Mark 18? Here's my thing, right? I feel like my minimum requirements for barrel length would be 11 inches or 11.5 inches because of ballistics. Doesn't really matter, no. I'm still want to do more research in regards to the popularity of the Mark 18 other than military units, just because I'm curious about the 10.3 inch barrel specifically. Like, what was unique about 10.3 as opposed to 10.5, and like velocity differences and choices. Realistically, again, for any engagements I'd be dealing with, 10.3 and the ballistics at 10.3 will be perfectly sufficient. I know, I'm just nerding out. What do you suggest for someone who's under the age of 21 to start training? Awesome question. Let me pull one of those options out. I'm back. I'm here. Okay, so here are two different options that you can use. First of all, regardless of you having a lot of background training or not, something that everyone's going to be doing is dry fire. Dry fire practice is extremely important, and it develops your skills to be better and better and better. So by the time you get a gun, you could already be at a point where you're doing much better. One thing you can get is called a SIRT pistol. They're a little bit pricey, honestly, I get that, but it's a great way to be able to practice. The one thing you need to be aware of is that when you're using this training gun, you must treat it like a real gun, because a lot of people turn it into a game and it loses the value of how great this is. So this is a replica of a Glock 17. So there's a lot of different targets you can print out, like Dot Torture or the Bear Solutions Cold Star drill, or the Rune Nation, I believe it's pronounced, drill. There's a lot of different drills you can do, and you can practice with dry fire. You make sure you practice your trigger press, your breathing, your stance, your grip, all the basic fundamentals. Yeah, that's something to be aware of, right? So having that properly set up, I think, is very good. So that's one option. Another option, which is also more fun, but you need, again, if you're going to get it for the purpose of training, your mindset should always be that anyone you hand it to or anything that you do with it, you must treat it like a real gun, because if it loses its importance of what it is, it loses the value of the training that you're doing with it. So it must be treated seriously. So this gun, I almost treat more seriously than I treat my actual firearms, because I know once I break the habit of this not being treated like a real gun, then the value of the training it provides is no longer there. So that's going to be the first option, is assert. This other one I'm about to show you, don't freak out, it's in a chassis. But it's a video that's coming up soon that I'm going to be making, but it's about the interior of what this is that's important. This, really cool system. What it is an airsoft gun, but what it is that, again, I treat it the same way as if it was a real firearm. The benefit, though, is that you can set up targets and get visual and audible feedback in regards to what it does. It also is able to recoil. It's not going to be as aggressive, but it gives you a little bit more of a feel for how a real gun is actually able to work. And it actually works really nicely. And again, this happens to be the chassis, because to take it out would be complicated, but it's the actual pistol itself. Again, since you're able to practice reloads with it, you're able to get audible and visual feedback. You can set up targets in your garage and practice the motions. You could get all the real gear that you're able to use, like the real stuff you would actually want, and have it set up with an airsoft gun. That when you get your real gun, you can have all your stuff that you've already practiced for months in, right? To be able to train, or years in, to be able to train. I've actually seen people who, it was a girl who was probably around 15 or something, who was out shooting people who've had years of background, probably because they also didn't get proper training at some point, but also because she focused so much on dry fire practice that when it came time to actually use a real gun, the fundamentals were very, very good. The only thing that usually comes up is shot anticipation, but that's normal, and that's something you're able to get over. We have 2 student rabbis coming up later this month. Would you recommend some range time with a 22 pistol and a rifle before we bring the noise? Yes. Just because a part of what again, shot anticipation is a real thing, and a 22 is really going to be like a airsoft gun. So what I would say is just be careful, because most times when I bring people to the range, I'll only load 1 or 2 rounds most to start, just because once they do like 2 shots and they feel like, oh, the recoil is nothing, they start rapid firing, and it takes away the seriousness of it being a firearm. So I think start off with that and then transition to real guns. Also, I said real guns, and now people who like 22s are mad. But you can start off with 22, transition to 9mm, something along those lines, and at least there's going to be some understanding of that transition going through. Reading questions? Did I miss anything? Good questions? We are on the 5-minute countdown before the live ends. By the way, question to you guys, how is the audio? I know I need to probably bring up the volumes on the mic a little bit. Let me know if that's true. How is the clarity? How was the connection? Was there any lag? Did you see any stuttering with the audio or anything like that? I'm curious to get your feedback so I can see if this setup worked. The one issue I'm actually running into is that when I set up a link, like a reminder link to let you guys know that I'm going to be doing a live, I'm never ultimately able to use that link again. I'm not sure what the issue is. I'm going to look into it. So that's why I end up using a new link, but it's very inconvenient for people because no one knows where to ultimately go. I'm glad all of you guys are here right now, but I know that's been a problem. So I'm curious. The audio is choppy. Okay, so I need to figure out what the audio deal is. I know I had an issue with the mic. I have to check what the issue with the mic is. Also, I'm assuming once this goes live, it's going to be restructured in a way that the audio is going to be more clear. It will be a Browning 1911 22 and an MP5 clone in 22, then possibly a Glock 19 and AR. Awesome. Those are both heavier guns. So meaning the Browning 1911 is going to be a heavier framed gun. So the value of that is going to be that besides for being 22 and has no recoil, the additional weight of that also is going to reduce it even more. So again, as a beginner's gun, I think that's great. What I'd recommend you do, by the way, when you're training them is focus very aggressively on fundamentals, because since it's 22 and they're not worried about anticipating and all that stuff, that way they're at least be able to build up some of their fundamentals without the risk of things going bang and then picking up bad habits. That's usually the issue I've seen in classes. What would you suggest as a rifle for someone under 21 in a place where you can't get an AR like Massachusetts? So I think you could. The question is what variety and what modifications you'd have to do. That's the question. If not, I remember doing research on this as well. Since California was getting blue guys, so I started doing research into like different options. Mini 14, SOCOM, M14, I believe those are good guns. They're not ideal, but they work really well. The M14 is in 308, so that's a heavy kicking bullet. The which one is it? The mini carbine? It's called the mini carbine, 30 carbine. That's kind of an obscure round though, so that's a little bit complicated to get. There are options, by the way. Again, the questions about the legalities of the states, because I'm not familiar with it. But there is even a company that makes an AR loader receiver that's configured like a shotgun loader receiver. So that when you put the AR, it's kind of like a shotgun configuration. Look that up. I forgot the name of it. There's a 10 round max capacity for magazines. Mini 14 for Massachusetts. I'm not sure the legalities. That might be available. I have a 10 round capacity in the state that I'm living in, and an AR is great because a reload of an AR is a second and a half, something like that, depending on like how much you train. So I don't think that's a huge disadvantage, and I still would go with an AR-15. All these stuff are limited to 10 rounds. It's not ideal, but I still think the AR-15 platform would be the route I want to take. I think Hoodlum is writing a question right now. He gave me a warning to wait. Okay, so honest, at what point is it socially acceptable to just give the middle finger to the government since they do not have our interests at heart? I'm at the point when I just quit caring. So here's the question. I've asked this question before. I've asked people like, where's the actual line that you draw, right? So human beings work based off like social cues and social decisions. So what happens? I've done a lot of like psychology research into riots, right? The way riots work and the way riot dispersion works is that they take you away from the group mentality and make you think about an individual. The reason why tear gas is so effective is not because it alone is so effective. Obviously, it's very effective. Like, you don't want to be hit by tear gas. But the main thing that does within a riot environment is that it goes away from the perspective of like, we're strong, we're a team, to as an individual, I'm in pain, I need help. So what the question is going to be at what point will, I think, like Americans as a whole realize how bad of a situation we're in, to the point that as a whole we'll all be like, this is not okay, like this is a really big problem. And I feel like there are a lot of people very quickly getting there. I don't think we're there yet, but I think there are a lot of people getting there. So the question everyone has to ask themselves is that so we'll give the example that's never going to happen because they're more sneaky than this, is going to be that people say like, if someone ever comes to my door and says, we're here to take all your AR-15s, like that's the line I'm going to draw. So usually the way they're doing it is through legislation, where they're saying, we're going to take away this, we're going to take away this, we're going to take away this, to the point that they're like a bunch of little things that we're all getting upset about, but nothing's actually being done, and that's a problem. So the question is going to be, is if there's going to be a time where you could create a line in your head that if legislatively, legally, whatever the term might be, that something happens, you're like, this is not okay. And it's a very big part of the reason why we have the Second Amendment is going to be to fight tyrannical government. So at what point will a person be able to ask the question, say, for myself, this is the line that I'm not going to cross, and this is what should not be acceptable, and this is a problem. So I think a lot of people have different perspectives, and there needs to be some kind of understanding that as a whole for the US, we need to figure out what that is. The reason why I'm saying that is because also there are guys who, let's say, live in Texas or they live in Tennessee, and they have pretty good laws there, and they're looking at other states like California and New York and New Jersey, which gun laws there are already terrible, and they're like, yeah, that's okay, that's the way it is, or it's not really going to happen to us, and it's kind of like an us versus them mentality, as opposed to us as Second Amendment advocates and people who understand the reason why we have the Second Amendment. Like, that's a problem. So if we were looking at it as a group, as us being Second Amendment carrying people versus me in Tennessee and you in New Jersey have different legalities, so like that's a problem on you, you guys should have done something differently, then I think that's really where the big thing would come. So I think a big part of it is going to be about figuring out what line would we actually be truly willing to set in regards to not willing to giving things up or not willing for things to go further. And then past that is going to be, as a Second Amendment community as a whole, being able to stick up for each other, and even if it's another state. So you have an idea that you think that they're going to come straight to your door and take your guns there. Again, I think a lot of people will have a very aggressive perspective in regards to that happening directly. Again, the reason why people don't think it's going to happen is because you have so many guns in the U.S. and the government has made it so impossible to believe that they're willing to go door to door and go and get into gunfight after gunfight after gunfight with people who know their home better than the other person, and gunfight after gunfight after gunfight of millions of people dying just because they think they could. I don't think that's possible. I think there's going to be some other perspective, again, legislatively, that's going to be taking place that would make that what's going to happen. In Massachusetts, there's no removable magazine law. There is break barrel option. I hate not break barrel, but it's like you open up the receiver option. It's not great. The other thing you should check up is called featureless. Check if you have a featureless option. That's an option. So you think they're going to implement gun laws in Texas? This is the thing. So I wonder if a state like Texas would actually be a state that would be like, no. I know that there's some like police jurisdictions that are not willing to enforce like certain laws, like in Florida. The audio cut out. I want to make sure that I'm still hearing it. Look, Yo-Yo12. Look into the option of something called featureless. If you have the option to go featureless, that might be a better route to go. The question would be is if a state like Texas would be willing to show the rest of the U.S. that it's not something they're willing to handle. I know there's a sheriff in Florida, somewhere in Florida, who's been on the news multiple times saying that they're not people that they've been asked to, and they have not gone forward with restricting certain gun laws and things like that. I'm not saying every police county is like that. I think the majority are not like that, but that's just something to be aware of. Yes, thank you. Featureless rifle, that's an option. Okay, I'm going to head out. I hope this was somewhat informative to the people watching. I appreciate you guys all joining. If you have a question in regards to a future live, please feel free to leave it in a comment in a video or anything like that. Message me. If you follow me on Instagram, you can message me directly if there's something you'd like to ask. And let's be in touch. Yeah, I enjoyed it. These are getting more interesting because I feel like it's more off script. I'm able to just talk and ramble for a long time, and people for some reason find me interesting, and I'm amazed. Local gun shops in your area should be able to tell you what is legal where you live. Correct. So just find out what the best option is, because they might give you options that are legal but not ideal for your specific scenario. But that should be part of it. Okay. I appreciate all of you guys watching. Like the video if it makes a difference. I don't know if it does. Everyone said the analytics and stuff, but I don't really know what makes a difference.